All right, welcome back, everybody. Iran is vowing revenge after twin blasts killed 84 people on Wednesday in the city of Kerman. No one has claimed responsibility so far for these attacks. Two U.S. officials saying the U.S. was not responsible, and four current and former officials say they do not believe Israel was behind the attacks. I want to bring in now NBC News Tehran bureau chief Ali Arouzi. We are getting some breaking news, Ali, I know, on who is taking responsibility now for this attack just happening in the last 60 seconds or so. What are you learning?
That's right, Yasmin. A lot of new information coming in just before we came on air. So let me tell you what the Iranians are saying first. State TV here is saying that investigators believe that the attack was conducted by suicide bombers. You'll remember yesterday they were saying these were suitcases laden with explosives that were remotely detonated. Now, State TV here is saying it was carried out by suicide bombers during the commemoration for Qasem Soleimani. A report by IRNA, which is state-run TV here, quoted an informed official source saying that surveillance footage from the route of the commemoration at the Kerman Martyr Cemetery clearly showed a male suicide bomber detonating explosives. The report added that a second blast probably also came from another suicide bomber, but they're still trying to determine exactly what happened with the second blast. The report also said that the bombers likely chose the location because they were outside the security perimeter for the commemoration. And as you mentioned, just after that IRIB report came out, the Islamic State on their official Telegram channel claimed responsibility for the attack. They said that two bombers using explosive belts detonated them in Kerman, and they took great pride in saying that they'd killed around 100 Shias who they're obviously very opposed to. So this goes against everything Iranian officials have been saying since last night, pointing the finger at Israel and the United States, and now the Islamic State have apparently taken responsibility for this attack. Also, to update you, the officials here have revised the death toll. They've brought it down now to 85 from 95 and 103 originally. Nonetheless, it still marks the deadliest terror attack in Iran since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Now, the big question now is, how are Iranian officials going to deal with this new claim by the Islamic State? Are they going to backtrack on everything they've said about Israel and the United States? Something they do here as well, Yasmin, is they'll say, well, the Islamic State was working on behalf of Israel and America. So we're going to be waiting for comments from Iranian officials now.
Yeah, unbelievable. Major developments there, to say the least. The Islamic State, just reiterating what Ali just said, claiming responsibility for the twin suicide bombings that happened in Kerman in the south of Iran. And just so folks understand, the majority of Iranians are Shia Muslims, whereas the majority of members of the Islamic State are Sunni Muslims. Ali Arouzi for us, as always, my friend, thank you. Please remain safe there.
On January 4 at approximately 12 p.m. Iraq time, U.S. forces took necessary and proportionate action against Mushtaq Jawad Kazim al-Jawari, a.k.a. Abu Taqwa, who is a Harakat al-Najuba leader. Abu Taqwa was actively involved in planning and carrying out attacks against American personnel. The strike also killed another Han member.
نستنكر هذا الاعتداء السافر من قبل القوات الأمريكية الذي تطاولت في هذا الاعتداء على وطن وله سيادة وعلم وبرلمان وحكومة، ولكن للأسف البرلمان صامت والحكومة لا تأدي دورها في اتخاذ قرار بخروج المحتل والدفاع عن الوطن.
A U.S. airstrike killed a militia leader in Baghdad linked to Iran, who has been blamed for recent attacks on U.S. forces in Iraq. Meanwhile, an Iranian-backed militia in Yemen launched another drone attack in the Red Sea Thursday. The U.S. and its allies have warned the group to stop or face potential military action. The Navy says Houthi rebels have attacked at least 25 cargo ships and tankers since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. In response, the U.S. says it has shot down 61 missiles and drones and sank 3 small Houthi-controlled boats in the Red Sea. CBS News national security correspondent David Martin joins us now from the Pentagon to understand all this activity. David, the U.S. and its allies have sent this warning to the Houthis to stop these attacks. They didn't listen, so now what happens?
Put it simply, John, the U.S. and the Houthis in Yemen are on a collision course. The U.S. and a number of other countries issued this warning to call off these attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea or else. And then a senior administration official followed that up by telling reporters there would be no more warnings. That was the final warning. And since then, we have had at least one more confirmed attack when a suicide drone boat, an unmanned boat, came out from the Yemeni coastline into those crowded shipping lanes that lead to and from the Suez Canal and detonated. Now, nobody was injured, no ships were damaged in the attack. They were all far enough away from the explosion. But going through the Red Sea has become such a hazard that nearly 20 shipping companies have told their ship captains not to use the Suez Canal, take the long way around Africa, which of course adds time and money to every voyage. The U.S. has tried to frustrate these attacks by putting ships in the Red Sea to shoot down the drones and missiles, but the attacks keep coming. The one thing they haven't done so far is go to the source, and the source here is, of course, Houthi bases in Yemen. So if these attacks continue, and the U.S. expects they will, then we can expect to see retaliatory strikes inside Yemen.
And David, before I lose you, you're talking about retaliatory strikes, so that's more activity in the Red Sea. There's this U.S. operation in Baghdad. It seems like the tempo is increasing. Give me your sense of, you know, it seems like a lot of activity. What are Pentagon officials concerned about the tempo increasing in lots of different places?
It's not so much the tempo as it is the targets. This is an escalation. We have retaliated before for these missile attacks on U.S. troop locations in Iraq and Syria, but we have retaliated against warehouses and safe houses. We haven't gone after the leaders of these militia groups themselves. This time, they specifically targeted one leader. They didn't hit a warehouse, they hit his car. And so this is a way of bringing it home more directly to these Iranian-backed militias.
Yes, indeed. David Martin, thank you so much at the Pentagon for us. Thanks, David.
Elsewhere in the Middle East, ISIS is claiming responsibility for the deadly bombings in Iran that left more than 100 people killed. The bombings happened during a memorial honoring Qasem Soleimani, the terrorist U.S. forces killed in 2020. The incident is adding concern that the Israel-Hamas war will spread further into the Middle East. Already, the conflict has killed more than 22,000 people, according to Gaza officials, 70% of which are children. UNICEF has declared Gaza the worst place in the world to be a child.
A series of events point towards a wider war in the Mideast, and as it has been for over 40 years, Iran is at the heart of it. On Tuesday, a top leader of Hamas assassinated in Lebanon. It is assumed that Israel did it. On Wednesday, 2 explosions in Iran killed dozens at a ceremony marking the 4th anniversary of Trump's droning of Iran's terror chief, Qasem Soleimani. The U.S. Navy took out 3 gunboats which had been attacking shipping, all Iranian-backed crew members killed. Hours later, the U.S. and 12 allies warned the Houthis against any more attacks on shipping. It was a final warning. In other words, don't do it because we're not going to take it. And just this morning, the U.S. carried out a retaliatory strike in Baghdad, killing an Iran-backed militia leader who was behind recent attacks on U.S. personnel in Iraq. Sounds like the end of restraint, which has been President Biden's policy. Sounds like Biden is losing patience. Well, it's about time. He's bent over backwards to appease the mullahs, and it hasn't worked. Iran sees America as weak and acts accordingly. There has to come a point where there are known consequences. They've got to know that our response to their hostility will be severe. They've got to know the price they will have to pay. A little history. The Iranians took American diplomats hostage in the late 70s. They came back to America only when Ronald Reagan became president. They let them go because they were very worried about what Reagan would do. In 2019, President Trump droned Iran's terror chief. Trump shut them down until Biden reversed course and went back to appeasement. So we've turned full circle. It's a moment of truth. Appeasement doesn't work. It's time to put the mullahs back in their box. Will Biden do it?
By the way, Israel's President Netanyahu dismissing calls for a ceasefire yesterday. He says the war will not stop until Israel finishes off Hamas. He said that from the very beginning. Florida Congressman Mike Waltz joins me now. Congressman, will the U.S. back Israel no matter how long it takes? And then my follow-up to that will be, can Hamas really be wiped out?
Yeah, that's the key question, right? And what I've said over and over again, and many others, is that as long as Iran is flush with cash, as long as they're exporting as much oil, they have the foreign currency reserves, and they're pumping millions, if not billions, into these terrorist organizations, I don't know that Israel can ever be fully successful. They'll be mowing the grass, and it will grow back as long as we do not change our Iran policy. We have got to return to maximum pressure. We've got to cut off the money from Tehran to its proxies, and we have to hit back. Every time you see one of our bases attacked and you see a key administration official come to the microphone and tell the world that our main goal is non-escalation, the Iranians hear that as we aren't going to hit back to things they care about, and they can continue to get away with what they're doing. So the best thing we could do for Israel right now is reverse course on Iran, cut off the cash, and hit Iran back where it counts.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's my next question for you. Trey Inks just talked about this. 3 service members injured by an Iranian drone attack. We did respond to this with a strike of our own, but you know, there's been over 100 attacks on U.S. troops in the Mideast since October. So my question is, has our response to these attacks been strong enough, in your opinion?
Well, it hasn't been nearly strong enough. We have pumped bombers, air defense systems, additional ships into the region, and clearly Iran has not been deterred, because at the end of the day, we can have the most capable military in the world in the region. And by the way, these forces are being diverted from places like in the area near Taiwan. They're being brought from home where they should be in maintenance and getting ready in case they're needed in some type of hot war. So there's an opportunity cost. But as long as Iran believes we don't have the political will, or we don't have the strategy to hit them, not their proxies in Iraq or even the Houthis down in Yemen, but to hit Iran itself, then you can have all the forces in the world. It's not going to matter. Clearly, they're not deterred, and they continue to strike. And I fear one of these hits are going to get through and be catastrophic.
Well, I hope that's not true, but I hear you. Last one for you, Congressman. Lines of communication now between the U.S. and Chinese military leaders finally reopened after a year of silence, but I've seen you talk about this. You're sounding the alarm. You want to know what we conceded to get China to talk. How do we get those answers, and what do you think was conceded?
Well, we'll continue to make those demands for transparency on this critical relationship from the administration. But was it on tariffs? Was it on easing up on export controls? This seems like this administration will do anything practically to get the Chinese to stop building coal-fired power plants. They built more in the last year than the rest of the world combined. Again, what did we concede? We already humiliated ourselves on the international stage by allowing the Chinese to lecture us on U.S. soil. And now we're finding out that she told Biden to his face on American soil that he's going to take Taiwan one way or another. And the administration didn't tell us that, right? We had to find that out through some investigative journalism. So what else happened in those talks? What else was conceded? Because clearly the administration has an appeasement first strategy here that is very, very dangerous to a dictator like Xi Jinping.
All right. You're right, exactly. Congressman Waltz, as always, sir, thank you so much for stopping by and joining us today. We do appreciate it.
And the acting secretary talked about it. A 32% pay raise over 5 years. That's historic. That's historic. And by the way, so many of you were on the front lines forever and during the pandemic. It is long overdue. You got a pay raise. Long overdue. That's the point of organized labor. That's the point of collective bargaining. It's about fairness. It's a fundamental value that we as a nation say we hold sacred.